In this video, we're going to talk about how web servers utilize cryptography and encryption in order to secure the traffic that is being sent to and from the websites, both in a secure and in a highly scalable fashion. Now, first off, before we talk about the technology, let's talk a little bit about SSL and TLS. SSL stands for Secure Sockets Layer versus TLS, which stands for Transport Layer Security. Essentially, SSL is the old version, TLS is new. You may hear them being referred to kind of in an interchanged method. You may see people refer to SSL today as opposed to TLS, which they should be using, or using TLS when they should be talking about SSL. It's not really that big of a problem. It's just a technical term. So a little bit of history about it. SSL 1.0 came out. It was actually never published. Somebody came up with the plan and it never actually got implemented. SSL 2.0, however, came out in 1995, which, if you are an early adopter of the internet, that was way early. That was really early for the internet. SSL 3.0 came out a year later in 1996, and as you can see, both of these guys are considered deprecated and should not be used. Deprecated meaning old, meaning easily broken. In fact, SSL 3.0 is vulnerable to what's called a poodle attack, which is very easy to implement, and therefore most any website that was running SSL 3.0 is considered vulnerable because of the fact that they support the 3.0 protocol. After SSL 3.0, they came out with TLS, TLS 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, and now 1.3, and you can see the dates there. 1.0 and 1.2 actually became deprecated this year in 2020. 1.0, 1.1. Both became deprecated or considered deprecated this year in 2020. There may still be some websites out there that are using them, but it's considered old and should be upgraded to 1.2 and 1.3. Not saying that they're unusable at this point, but they should definitely be replaced. Now, with all of these various protocols and the various encryption methods that are possible out there, how do the servers and the clients actually choose which ones to use? Well, it's really a communication process. If the client comes up and says, hey, I support version TLS 1.2 and the server supports TLS 1.3, then the server says, well, hey, you know what? Since you only support 1.2, I will downgrade my security from 1.3 to support 1.2, and then we can communicate back and forth. Now, there is a little bit of intelligence happening here. For instance, if the client comes up and says, hey, I only support SSL 3.0, and the server specifically does not support anything earlier than, say, TLS 1.1, then the server and the client just won't be able to communicate back and forth. So there is some communication, some agreement as far as which protocols may be supported and can be supported by both of them. So SSL, TLS, that's kind of the underlying foundation for the encryption methodology. So how these guys actually work is they utilize what's called a public key infrastructure. Out here on the internet, we have a server called example.com. And the example.com server wants to be able to host secure communications to their clients. So what they do is they go up to a certificate authority who is also out on the internet, and they submit a certificate signing request, or a CSR. They submit that to the certificate authority, and the certificate authority generates two keys, what's called a public key and a private key. Now, because the certificate authority is online, it's on the internet, this public key is automatically available to everyone. Which is really great because the way public key infrastructure works, everybody has the public key, only our server or private person holds the private key, and because the certificate authority is available to everybody, they've taken care of making sure everybody can read that. So once I have the public key and the private key, then the end user can come over to the web server and it can actually start to establish a secure communication utilizing these public-private key pairs. Now, the big question then comes up of, well, what's to stop a hacker from doing this? What's to stop a hacker from setting up a fake example.com and a fake certificate authority and then creating their own public-private keys? And it is entirely possible for somebody to do this. However, the end user trusts this certificate authority. You probably never set this trust up. It probably came on your computer by default, but there is a trust to some certificate authorities. And because I trust the certificate authority, I therefore inherently trust everybody that they trust. Since this trust is already there, then I can go ahead and create this secure communication with example.com. If, however, I see a communication with a server that says they're example.com, but has a key that is not created by that CA, then I don't trust it. So the trust mechanism is what helps me establish that communication with the web server. For example, if I look at a web browser here, I'm just going to go ahead and go out to Amazon.com. And when I go to Amazon.com, I can see that I have this little lock icon right next to my name, or right next to the site. And it says, hey, your connection is secure. And here's where the certificate is. And I can specifically see there in the pop-up, it says issued by DigiCert Global CAG2. I can look at more details. For instance, here it is. It's issued to www.amazon.com, issued by DigiCert CAG2. And because I trust DigiCert, therefore, I can trust this certificate, which was created by DigiCert, and therefore I can trust any site that has this private key that it says that they are Amazon.com. All right. So how do the communications actually work? We mentioned public-private key. If you watch my other videos talking about symmetric and asymmetric encryption, we start off creating a connection using asymmetric encryption. So we utilize the PKI asymmetric encryption in order to initiate a communication between the client and the server. This is very, very secure. The public-private key is a very secure method of encrypting data. We can use very large keys to make it very hard for people to encrypt or to decrypt or to intercept our communications. But it is compute intensive and therefore fairly slow. But what we do with this creation of the communication, with the initiation of the connection, is we create a shared key. So at this point, we now have a secure communication channel between the client and the server. And so the client creates a shared key. It creates a really, really long shared key and then sends it across the secure communication channel. So now that they have a shared key that has been securely communicated between the two systems, now we can utilize a symmetric encryption utilizing that shared key. So we use one communication method of asymmetric encryption in order to initiate the connection, and then we use symmetric encryption in order to actually transmit the data. This is very, very fast, but not overly secure. The primary concern with symmetric encryption is the sharing of that key. Therefore, we shared the key over the asymmetric encryption, which is very secure, and now this is a fairly secure process. if we're not entirely sure about that, that asymmetric encryption channel is still open and is still used to regularly update the shared key. So every 20 seconds or so, our shared key is updated. Our symmetric encryption is updated with new keys over all the time, which means even if somebody's able to intercept our communication, they're only able to intercept it for a few short moments. So there you go. That's how websites secure their traffic. They secure it securely utilizing asymmetric encryption. They make sure that everybody that comes and talks to them starts off with an asymmetric encryption technology to make sure that all the communication is secure. They then scale up in order to support thousands of clients at one time using symmetric encryption in order to communicate very quickly and very efficiently to all the clients that are out there.